Hey folks, and welcome to another episode of Podcraft. This is the show all about helping you grow a better podcast, a more successful podcast. I'm Colin Gray from alitu.com and thepodcasthost.com, joined by Matthew. As always, Matthew, how are you getting on?
Yeah, I'm not too bad, Colin. Thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah, not bad, not bad. I was away last week, so I'm feeling slightly rested, at least. How about you? You good these days? Feeling all rested, relaxed?
Yeah, I'm not dead anyway, so I guess that's a bonus.
Always looking on the bright side, Matthew.
Exactly, yeah, exactly. So yeah, still kicking a ball. I was scrambling for the mute button there. For some reason, I have plugged in my XLR cable into channel 2, but the mute button I'm used to pressing is always channel 1. So I don't know why I've done that. So I was like, I am muted at the moment, which I'm not. It looks like I am. And B, it's just going to be a bit tricky each time I cough. So anyway, behind the scenes.
Yeah, indeed. Right, what are we covering today, Matthew? We're going to cover agree or disagree, an agree or disagree episode, aren't we? Things we'll agree or disagree to. You come up with this. Do you want to give a wee intro to it?
Yes. So we got really good feedback for the past few episodes that we did. I think we did some trends, we did some predictions, we did some myths, and it seems that the audience really enjoys these episodes, and that's good because I think, Colin, we really enjoy doing them as well, don't we? So definitely. This continues the theme. So yeah, I'm going to present to you some statements, and then we're going to discuss whether we agree or disagree with said statements. How does that sound?
Sounds great. Always good to get to disagree with stuff. So yeah, go for it.
Just disagree with everything. So anything you want to shout out or that before we dive in?
I suppose I will say if you're looking for something to grow your show at the moment or create your show in a more easy way, then go and check out Alitu. But we can talk about that more at the end of the show, just a wee sponsor slot there too. But yeah, as always, our content's always supported by Alitu, the best podcast maker out there. But yeah, other than that, let's jump in.
Yeah, never heard of it, but looking forward to finding out more at halftime. So yeah, agree or disagree. So the first one I've got down here is that podcasters need to keep in touch with industry news and trends. Do you agree or disagree with that statement, Colin?
Disagree entirely. Well, before we jump into it, what about you?
Yeah, disagree. Yeah, I've got more on it, but let's hear what your thoughts are first.
I'm a bit of a hermit when it comes to trends and news in many ways. Even when it comes to world news, like I tend to dip into, looking at the news of the world. Wait a minute, that's an old paper.
Not the newspaper.
If you haven't heard of that, it's a terrible, terrible old rag from the UK. Never read it. Terrible. But yes, the news in the world, I tend to not keep up with it. Like every day, I definitely don't read every day. I'll look into it every few days. I'll maybe talk to people a bit about what they're seeing in the news, and that's kind of how I keep up with what's going on in the world, because I just find that I end up down a rabbit hole and I don't keep up with it. It makes me feel a bit crap, to be honest. So I still keep up with what's happening, but I just don't do it every day. And I do it in a kind of ways that stop me falling down rabbit holes. And I find the same even with our industry stuff. I prefer to be a creator than a consumer. But the other hand, and the thing that people argue against that, is that to be a creator, you do have to be a consumer in some way. You still need to know what's going on in the world, particularly in your industry, to be able to respond to it, to be able to talk about it, all that kind of stuff. So I think that you definitely don't need to keep up with it every single day. I think that getting into it maybe once a week, once every couple of weeks even, can give you plenty enough of the news and the trends that helps you not miss anything that's important in your industry, but actually miss all of the little bits of drama that you do not need to keep up with in your industry that stops you actually creating things. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, can't really disagree with anything you've said there. I think for us in our jobs in podcasting, keeping up with outlets like Pod News and Sounds Profitable, and that is great. That really helps me to help others. And you know, there's like any news channel, there's a lot of stuff in there that I'm simply not interested in, but there's a lot of good stuff in there as well. But if we just think about a typical indie podcast, there's somebody who's running, you know, a gardening podcast, and all of their energy is just filtered towards creating a great show and serving their audience. They don't need to keep up with all that stuff. And if there's anything really important that impacts them, like an example is Apple's recent announcement about their enhanced support for video podcasts. And what you'll see there is all the hosting providers out there will look to take that information and interpret it and you know, present it to their customers. So your hosting provider, for example, can take the stuff that really matters, that really impacts you, and you could still hear about it and you could still get their take and their advice on it without having to get like the industry news as a whole, which, you know, a lot of it's just going to be simply irrelevant and take you away from what moves the needle.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. What about their own industry news? Like even like say a gardening podcast, do they need to keep up with gardening news? Is that an intrinsic part of any show?
I guess it depends on the show. Like if your show was simply about your own garden, then probably not. But if you did the gardening industry news and trends show, then I imagine you probably do need to. So yeah, I guess that's totally dependent on your content, isn't it?
I think that's absolutely, but I think there's a lot of people that think that they do run, say, a show about like keeping your own garden or teaching people about gardening, whatever that might be. And they feel like they should keep up with the industry because that kind of gets them in the industry. But actually, so many people listen to the podcast that they love because they just want to hear about that person's experience. And actually, that's nothing to do with the larger news, the larger trends. So, yeah, I think even in that case, many times it's something that's irrelevant, or at least you can keep down to, you know, a once a week dip in or have one trusted source that collates it for you, that kind of thing.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Happy enough for that then?
Indeed. All right, let's go number 2. So I'll pose this one to you this time, Matthew. Paid subscriptions require extra work or content. Is that right? When you're running a paid subscription, do you always have to create extra content for it?
I disagree with that. And I think that this is a trap that a lot of creators fall into. Like they start a Patreon or, you know, any other sort of crowdfunding platform, they run a membership and they just feel compelled to create more stuff or give more stuff. And I often think the reason that your fans support you is simply because they like what you do already. They don't necessarily need or want more stuff. I'm not saying that there's no value in bonus content, because some of it can be done really well and without much extra work. But there is a trap to feel like, you know, all these people are paying me. I need to put more stuff in front of them. I need to prove that this is valuable to them. Sometimes I just think these people are supporting you for the main channel that you put out there, which is free. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, totally the same. Yeah, I disagree with this. I think that some people do this well. So some podcasts do create bonus content, they create extra stuff, and it can work. But honestly, in my experience, I have paid for many a podcast in the past 10, 15 years to support them. Sometimes it's exactly as you say, like it's just really, there's nothing extra needed. I just want to support the content they already create. And then they'll send this extra content and I'll kind of feel compelled to listen to it because I'm paying for it, but I never have time. You often barely have time to keep up with the standard content. So I think in many cases, actually, the extra content is almost a downside. And actually, it's other things that people want, like a community to take part in or something like that, which isn't really any extra work for, well, that's probably a lie. Running a community is always a wee bit of extra work, but it's not extra content for sure. Or maybe it's just giving people shout outs that are, you know, the supporters, that kind of thing. Little bonuses like that can often be the best kind of bonus, I think, or you know, benefit of being a subscriber. So yeah, I definitely don't think it's a necessary thing at all.
There's a podcast I like, and it comes out every fortnight, every 2 weeks, and the episodes are often longer than 2 hours. And I'm not a supporter on Patreon, but they say that you know, if you support us on Patreon, you get an extra half hour. You know, we record for an extra half hour. I always think, like, if you've spoke for 2 hours, What value could there be in this half hour that wasn't valuable enough to be in the 2 hours? So it might be the best half hour you've ever heard, but I wonder, I'd rather they just said, look, if you like what we do, just support us.
Yeah. Do you know a way I've seen people do it really well? One, I've seen a few shows do this more recently, whereby they do a normal interview show or a co-hosted show, and that is the standard content, which is always great. Like, that's why people like the show. But they'll do an AMA, like an Ask Me Anything, maybe once a month, that kind of thing. And those episodes are always really popular because it's really digging right into that person's, opinions, thoughts, all that kind of stuff. If it's normally an interview show, this is when you get to hear more from the interviewer, the host, a bit more as well. And also, it just means that you can participate. You can actually send questions as well, which is always fun to do too. And I've seen paid shows take those AMAs and either give away the first 20 minutes for free, but then say 20 minutes in, right, you get another hour of this if you pay the bonus, if you pay the subscription, or take the AMAs altogether off and the AMAs are all fully bonus content. And that means it's not really exactly extra content. It's a type of episode that you would do normally anyway, but it's a great little bonus, I think, for people to put out there. So I think those kind of things can be quite nice. Or the other thing, actually, I don't know, have you seen this, Matthew, whereby the bonus content is often actually more raw, more unedited, more basic in many ways. It's kind of almost diary type content. I think you've covered this on an episode before, haven't you? That kind of diary voice note style content. That actually can work really nice as bonus content, can't it?
Yeah, it can. It could also work well as your main content, though. So
yeah. But it's kind of low work, extra content, isn't it, to be able to do that? Like, so if you are doing something bonus to put as an extra, I think it can be a nice little extra. Makes people feel like they're getting a bit behind the scenes.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, there's definitely a place for bonus content, but never at the expense, I would say, of your primary channel.
Yeah, definitely. All right.
So the next statement is podcasters control their own discoverability. Do you agree or disagree, Colin?
Well, this is a bit of a controversial one, isn't it? I mean, yes, I agree. There are parts of it that podcasters don't control. So you can't control your rankings necessarily. You can't control whether people actually talk about your show, all that kind of stuff. But you have so much control. You have so much power to influence it, at least, don't you? Like, you can do so much growth work around SEO, around making sure that your episodes are well named, that you're finding the right topics to talk about, that you're then sharing it with the right people, the right networks, that you're becoming parts of communities so that people find out about you and then find out about your show as a result, that you empower guests to talk about it by giving them loads of things to share. All these things that you can do. But at the end of the day, you can do all of that work and you don't actually have any power over whether it works. So I suppose that's the part where you don't really control your own discoverability. But it's kind of like that old saying about luck, isn't it? Like, the harder I work, the luckier I get.
Yeah.
Or, the more work you do, the larger your luck surface area becomes. I've heard people say that as well. So I think that's it. Like, you can do a lot of work to make yourself much more likely to be discovered, certainly. What about you?
Yeah, no, I agree with what you've said and agree with the statement. I know that there are factors of discoverability that we have no control over. If you think about algorithms or just somebody, I was going to say somebody stumbling across your content, but to an extent you do have control over that again, because you think about, we can control a lot more than we can. Like, we control our podcast name, our episode titles, our cover art, our description, the content of the show, the guests, all of this is controlled by us, the people we collaborate with, where your show could be found. That's all under your control. So yeah, if you nail those, there's a decent chance that, people are going to discover your show. Or you could just not pay attention to any of this and moan about algorithms or charts or rankings. That takes the pressure off, because you could just blame somebody else. So
Yes, that's a common approach. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, so you do have more control than you think, I think, if you're out there listening. So yeah, definitely try and take some of that control for yourself. All right, Matthew, one more. 4 is YouTube is now more important to podcasters than Apple Podcasts. What do you think of that?
So my answer is disagree, but I think there's a little caveat here. It's disagree certainly with in terms of, audience engagement and relationship. It's potentially different if it comes to discoverability, though. Maybe YouTube arguably is more important to podcasters from a discoverability point of view than Apple Podcasts. So yeah, I would skew towards disagree, but there's a little caveat in there. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's a good read. It's an agree or disagree episode, but we're all kind of agreeing with each other. I think we both think about a lot of this stuff the same way, though. I think you're absolutely right. I think it's definitely not, YouTube is not more important to podcasters than, do you know, when you say just Apple Podcasts, I'm kind of reading that as, audio listening platforms. So not Apple Podcasts necessarily, but Apple Podcasts, Pocket Casts, Overcast, any place where podcasters listen to podcasts rather than watch necessarily. Although you can watch on some of them now as well, but yeah. So I think those platforms are way more important to podcasters still, because the most engaged listeners, the most engaged listening, the most engaged fans, all of that are still on listening apps. But yeah, absolutely. YouTube is a hugely more important discovery platform than it used to be. It's a great place to be found. But similar to, TikTok and other video platforms, Instagram, all the rest. But YouTube does work well. So yeah, I don't suppose you can deny that. But I think listening platforms will still be the more important platform for a fair while to come, if not forever, actually, for those really engaged, loyal, every single week listeners.
Yeah. No, I agree. Yeah, it's the relationship building and just ongoing communication with your audience. That is Apple Podcasts. That's all the other apps that you mentioned. I'm not saying you can't get that on YouTube. It's just much more difficult for the reasons that we've gone into quite recently on this podcast. So
yeah, indeed. Cool. Before we jump into another, I'll do our little sponsor read. So Alitu is, of course, the sponsor of all the content we create, because it's the app we created for you to make it much easier to create your podcast. You can find it over at alitu.com, and it does call recording, it does audio editing, it does podcast hosting, it fully cleans up all of your audio for you as well. It's got loads of editing tools built in that make your life easier, like removing ums and ahs, like adding in silences, like removing silences, like all of the different stuff that you tend to do, the grunt work that you do. Alitu is designed to actually take care of so much of that for you. So if you want to save time and make it much easier to put your podcast out there into the world, nip over to alitu.com. That's alitu.com. You get a 7-day free trial, so you can try an episode and see if it works for you. Put one out there into the world. All right, Matthew, what we got next?
Yeah, speaking of ad reads and sponsorships, here's a statement for you. Sponsor and ad reads should always be host read. Do you agree or disagree?
No, I disagree with this. I mean, I think it's long been known, and there is data out there, there's a few studies around that show that host read ads tend to perform better on average. But that does presume that the host is good at reading them as well.
True.
A lot of the studies are probably done on podcasts where the host is actually a pretty good host-read ad reader, essentially, and gets good kind of information to be able to read that ad from. But I mean, I think that ads that are well designed, that are created by the advertiser, and are designed for podcasting as well, can be pretty effective as well. I don't think there's some of that data does show, again, like host-read ads are better, but it doesn't show that non-host-read ads are that much worse, and especially if they're done well and in the spirit of podcasting, as in not like old school radio ads that just suddenly blare in a different tone and a different speed and completely different style to the rest of the podcast. So I think that there are places where sponsor slots, ad reads can be done externally and still work okay. But I'm not sure. What do you think?
I think I'm going to disagree with you for the first time on this episode. For the first time ever, we've never disagreed on anything. I think they should be. I think they should be, and I'm coming at this from a listener point of view. I just feel when I'm listening to a podcast, if the host goes away and another voice just comes on and does an ad, I feel interrupted, even if it's maybe a good or relevant ad. Whereas if it even cuts to like a pre-record and it's the host, I still feel like I'm there with the host. I don't know, it's just a psychological thing, I guess, but I just feel more interrupted when it's this third-party voice. So I would say I agree with that statement. It should always be host-read.
I think it's a good argument. I think the way I've seen it done well, the reason I'm not necessarily agreeing with it is I've seen other podcasts advertise on podcasts quite well because they're podcasts hosts, So if we were to advertise on somebody else's show, like take Dave Jackson, so Going School of Podcasting, we were to do an advert for his show, because we do a similar type of content, we do podcasting, we could design something that would fit into his style and his format much better than somebody that comes in completely knowledgeless and tries to create something new. So I think that's when it works well. You say, oh, look, you're listening to School of Podcasting. We love Dave's content. Something that we cover that's something alongside what he does is this blah 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 blah, and then get into it that way. So I think that's when I've seen it done quite well, where it's not necessarily the host and the ads are still quite effective. And I think there's more room for brands to do that as well, to be more like, to create ads that are more like podcasts as opposed to adverts. So yeah, I think you're right. Host-read is generally better, but I just think that it'd be interesting to see more brands try and be a bit creative about how they create some ad reads that actually fit into podcasting much more effectively.
Yeah, no, that's a good point on like if a podcast is sponsoring a podcast, and that is an edge case. But yeah, that is a situation where you're probably wanting to hear from the podcaster who's advertising. But again, hearing an ad about Dave, and Dave might just do this for free because he's a great guy, but why he loves Podcraft, he does a 45-minute ad on that, and his audience like him and they trust him. So looking forward to hearing that, Dave.
I really like the interview version of it as well. I've seen that done a few times, where the host will actually just talk to the founder of the company or somebody on the company's team, the brand that's advertising, and actually just ask them a few questions about the product. And it showcases some of the people behind that brand that's sponsoring, but still has the host in there lending their credibility to it. I think that can work quite nicely.
Like the scene in Wayne's World when they go corporate and they have the sponsor on. Wayne's World. Do you remember Wayne's World? Great film.
Yes, I do. I'm old enough. Yeah. All right. What about one more here, Matthew? What about guesting on other podcasts? Is guesting on other podcasts overrated?
I disagree with that. I think guesting on other podcasts is, when I think back again, listener hat on here or listener headphones on, when I think about most of the podcasts that I listen to or have listened to over the years, a massive percentage of them are probably because I heard the host being interviewed on another show. So based on that anecdotal evidence, I would say that this is completely adequately rated. What about you?
I think this is a tricky one in that it entirely depends on the podcast. I think it can be a very, very good effective way to get in front of new listeners. But I also think that there's two parts to it, perhaps. Even if it's a good show, even if it's a well listened to show, you still need to make sure it's a good fit. So I've had a few, I've been on so many shows over the last 15 years, and had positive experiences, many, but also quite negative experiences in some cases, where I just haven't done my research essentially and made sure it was a good fit. Nothing disastrous, nothing terrible, but just quite different hosting styles, quite different approaches to the topic, whatever it might be. And that just, at the end of the day, those kind of things are just a bit of a waste, because partly you won't enjoy it and partly the listeners are not going to resonate with you because you don't have the same kind of point of view as the host, which means that likely you probably don't have the same point of view as the listeners. As much as we'd like, everyone to, be interested in opposing points of view, podcasts are even more probably of an echo chamber than most medias, because you attract listeners that, like you and are like you, I'm afraid. So there's a lot of that in podcasting, I think, where you need to make sure that the podcast resonates. And the other side to it is that there's a whole lot of shows out there that don't do much work to promote themselves and just kind of trundle along with 50 to 100 listeners. And that's perfectly fine for a lot of shows, but it doesn't necessarily make it that effective for you to go on as a guest. And that's kind of an honest truth. You can go on for fun, but if the prime goal is to grow your own audience, then it's not necessarily going to be that effective. Again, it's great to go on these shows because we're all podcast hosts. It's great to help out friends and get on shows and contribute content. But if the prime goal is growth, then it's not necessarily that effective, I think, for many of them. So I'm not sure. What do you think?
Yeah, no, really good points. And again, I think back to, I've known a lot of podcasters, successful podcasters over the years that they'll do interviews, but if someone approaches them and wants an interview and they haven't launched yet, the podcaster will maybe say, look, I am up for it, but come back when you've done maybe 12, 15 episodes. They just want to see that you're serious about this. They want to make sure that they're looking after their own time because they're busy. And I dare say a lot of podcasters have been stung recording interviews with people that maybe didn't even go out because the person just didn't launch. They were trying to do like 8 interviews to launch where they got to 6 or that and just gave up. So there's that too.
Indeed.
What are you thinking? Are we wanting to move on and discuss a couple other things that we had on our agenda?
Yeah, let's go for it. So we're going to talk about a few of our own projects just to finish up, weren't we?
Yeah, I wanted to find out what you were up to recently, because you've been hiding from me. So
yeah, well, so a bit of news then. Yeah, so I'm kind of I'll say this on the show. We've talked about it a couple of times. Thank you for subtly leading into it there, Matthew. I'm going to step away from the show. So I've been doing this for 15 years now, and we've been doing it together for how many? 12, is it, Matthew?
Yeah, it's certainly. Yeah, it'll be about 11, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started the podcast host website in 2010. Podcraft, technically, in some form or another, existed before that as a kind of teaching podcast, but then actually the Podcraft podcast started maybe a year or two after that. And has gone on since then. And I've been talking about teaching podcasting all through that time, running the podcast host. You came on and the whole team as well. So yeah, I'm stepping away to do some other stuff. So I'm not going to be on the show from now on. There's a few things you were asking about what I'm kind of planning to do. A few things I want to do, just try some different things, really. I'm still really interested in the kind of creator business side of things. Like throughout this whole last 15 years, Matthew, like really, we've taught podcasting, we know podcasting, we can help anyone with podcasting, but so much of what we do is not actually podcasting, isn't it? Like, what do you spend most of your days actually doing?
Yeah, we've often laughed about this, haven't we? Like, I'm pretty much a writer, but like teaching podcasting. And I've obviously done a lot of podcasting, but I think that the thing I've done most in the past decade and a bit is writing, creating other types of content too. So yeah.
And this business that we've built over the last 15 years it's a creator business. It's a content business. It's not just a podcasting business. We've earned more money out of our blogging than the podcast at any point. The podcast has always been a great trust builder, a great support, a great engagement builder, which is how we often talk about podcasting. We have earned money through the podcast, but the YouTube channel as well, and then communities that we've built and courses that we've created and sold, and then software as well, like Alitu, creating Alitu actually as a software solution to our audience as well. So it's actually just one big creator business, content creation business, really. And that's kind of, I want to widen out into. So I've started a Substack, as everyone does, Matthew, everyone does. But really just to talk more about this stuff. So that's one part of it, really, actually, is just to start helping people with creator businesses a bit more. So I'll say, actually, if anyone wants to work on that, I'm going to continue on and do some one-to-one coaching and stuff like that, and teaching around creator business. So do get in touch if you are interested in that. You can find both the Substack and a contact form for that work over at just my name, colingray.link, colingray.link, and both of them are in there. So yeah, that's kind of that's the next phase for now, really. What about you, Matthew? You were running a Substack now as well, weren't you?
Yeah, I mean, first and foremost, the listener will be devastated to hear that I'm still going to be around. So, no, I'll still be here.
Nonsense,
I'll still
nonsense.
be here.
Yeah, do you know? Just before we jump into that, like that, you'll do absolutely brilliantly with this show, taking it forward. But also, Jacob's going to jump in a bit more as well, isn't he? So Jacob, part of our team, has been on the show a few times, but he's going to be one of your kind of more regular partners going forward, isn't he?
Yeah, exactly. Jacob's really good. I enjoy chatting with him, and hopefully the listener does too. So yeah, we'll keep going. And obviously, I've done, if you're a long time listener to the show, I've done a couple of little short solo ones where we've just like got really into one specific thing. So yeah, I'll kind of experiment a bit, but it'll be. I want to keep the core of the show the same. But I would love to hear from anyone as well. If if anyone wants to come on and talk about their own show, or have any topics they'd like to discuss too, then that'd be great to hear from you. But so you've got your Substack set up, Colin. How are you finding that so far? What do you think of Substack?
I like it, actually. I do. I think a lot of people have complaints about it in many ways. It's a bit restrictive in some ways. There's certainly not perfect, but I think as a way of growing a newsletter, growing a following, and getting your writing out there, like being able to write long form and just get it in front of people, I think it's one of the best ways out there just now. Like it's got one of the best growth engines for getting your writing out there, certainly in an easy way. So that's kind of why I started there. I just want to play around for the next sort of 3 to 6 months, writing stuff around creating a business around content, creating, a business around even software as well and stuff like that. All of the things that we've done over the last 15 years. So yeah, how are you finding it? Because you're playing around with it. Is it the tabletop gaming content you're creating on Substack, or was it something different? I can't remember now.
No, it's the game. It's gaming.
It's the
Yeah. So
gaming.
I've got a wee link there. No use to the listener, but there's a wee link down at the bottom in our notes that you could get a wee look at it. But yeah, I've put 3 editions. Do you call them editions? I suppose you do. Out. So I'm putting them out each Tuesday, and I'm really. This isn't like a Substack thing. I'm just enjoying putting the newsletter together. I'm picking out 5 things that I've noticed, usually new like miniatures or games or that. And then there's a couple of other wee things I'm adding in there, like I'm putting a link to my latest podcast episode and just a couple other wee bits and pieces. So I felt like on that 3rd week, which is this week, I do feel like it's starting to find its feet a wee bit now. So I am looking to just keep going with that for the foreseeable and just see how it goes. But I really like putting newsletters together, so this made sense. It took me a while to get the finger out and do it, but it makes sense to do.
Yeah, me too. I mean, we've ran newsletters for over 10 years now, haven't we, with the podcast host, and played with so many different ways of doing it. And I always I love it's very similar to podcasting in that you can mix things up every week, can't you, if you want? There's no requirement to stick to the same format, the same topic every single time. You can put your own thoughts out. You can be much more personal with it as well, which is very podcast like. And I've put out 1 edition of mine so far, but the last few weeks have been kind of hectic in terms of dealing with the whole transition and everything. So I want to start getting them out on a regular basis from next week onwards. So yeah, I'm looking forward to kind of playing around with that much more. What was that? Sorry,
I was saying, you're going to start a podcast?
A podcast around it? I don't know yet. I probably will at some point. Yeah, absolutely. How can you not? But I'm getting my fix of podcasting from the golf show at the moment, actually. So I'm happy enough doing that as the podcast for the moment.
Yeah, how many episodes have you got out of the golf show now?
We're on 12 now. So that's a few months worth. We've been mostly every week. We've missed 2 or 3 weeks maybe throughout that 12. So yeah, it's been pretty good that way. And yeah, getting a good bit of feedback already, actually. It's quite nice. So yeah, if you're out there listening, you play golf or are interested in the topic, go and check out Both Sides of Par. That's Both Sides of Par, because we are coming at it from both sides of the par spectrum, because Ross, my co-host, is a scratch golfer and I'm a really, really bad golfer. So talking about it from both sides. But yeah, it's good fun. Yeah. Are you getting much feedback on your newsletter at the moment, Matthew?
Yeah, I've heard from a few people. Obviously, I had a bit of a head start having the podcast audience there. So you're able to just get an immediate core of people subscribing. So yeah, the feedback so far has been positive, but just enjoying putting it together in itself is worth doing. And I think if that shines through in what you do, you inevitably build an audience around it anyway, don't you? And then that'll bring its own opportunities in time. But I'm in no hurry to try and do anything other than just put together something that I would enjoy myself.
Yeah. That's great having it as a companion to the podcast, which you've been doing for a while now, haven't you? One thing I want to play with actually is to see if the paid Substack stuff does well. So maybe even chuck like £50 or whatever a month into just seeing if that can actually grow listeners at all. Because the free algorithm's pretty good as it is, but the kind of paid advertising type stuff, I want to see if that's any good. Could be a good experiment. We could feedback, eh?
Yeah. But I guess this is it. Very, very sad. I'm just pulling out my phone, getting Overcast and unsubscribing from the show. Nonsense. It'll be great. You've always been the better part of the hosting combo here, Matthew. You come with the plans, you come with the structure, you come with the topics, and I just turn up and wing it and try and ruin your best laid plans. So I'm sure it'll be much better in future. No, it's been great. I've always really enjoyed doing the episodes, and I appreciate being brought on in the first place. I was a listener to Podcraft before I was an actual presenter on the show. So, but all the best in your next projects. I'll obviously we will be keeping in close touch. I'm not just going to cut you out of my life, although you might do that to me. It's up to you. But I've got your address, so
yeah. Well, do you know what we could mention? We have talked about this. We haven't started up again yet, but we ran a show for a little while, didn't we? Called Fantas AI. So Fantasy. We need to find a better way of saying that, don't we? But it's called FANTAS and then AI at the end. And the principle was to just play around with a kind of slightly comedy show about doing terrible role playing with AI as your games master. And it was terrible a couple of years ago when we did it, wasn't it? Because it was so bad at forgetting stuff, and it just was kind of hilarious that way. But I think you could probably do a much better one now with the current one. So we're going to potentially pick that one up again in the next few weeks, aren't we? So maybe I'll put a link to that in my colingray.link page. So if you want to check that out and see if we've actually started that one back up again when you listen to this, because Matthew and I will still be co-hosting, that's the hope, go and check out colingray.link and see if it's there. That's presuming you're still interested, Matthew.
Yeah, I mean, definitely like that show would have more legs now because, that was like 2022 era when, like you're saying, it was still a bit clunky. It was, a revelation at the time, but looking back, it was a bit clunky. But yeah, I mean, whether we do that or whether we try something else, I don't know, but I'm totally up for doing something for sure.
Yeah, we'll figure something out for sure. And just to say to everyone out there listening, whether you're a new listener and you barely know me and Matthew, or you've listened for years, which I know there's a few out there have listened to us for years, it's such an honor to have been your podcasting mentor, teacher, or just somebody to learn from our mistakes, because we've been making it up as we go along in many ways, and learning and sharing those experiences with you. So that's how it works really in podcasting. You take what you know, you share that, and then you figure out all the things that don't work and share those as well. So thank you for listening along the years. Thank you for watching anything on the YouTube channel, reading anything on our blog, or anything that you've consumed of our stuff. It's been an honor to do it. So thanks again, and we'll speak to you all later.